Hey everyone, today we are going to be greasing our wheel bearings on the X3. Our previous machine, we did not. This is actually, we had it before people started making wheel bearing greasers. So we really didn't grease our wheel bearings because you can't, because they're kind of sealed. Until now, until they came out with a wheel bearing greaser, at least it became popular. I don't know if they were out years ago, but we ran through a lot of wheel bearings. Basically, we go through creeks, sand, dirt, mud, stuff like that. We would wear a wheel bearing out once a year. At least one or two of them would be bad. I mean, the tire would wobble. The good way to check your wheel bearings is to jack your machine up. In X3, you got to have a pretty good size jack because you got to go way up with all the suspension travel. And basically, grab the top and grab the bottom of your tire. And as long as your lug nuts and everything's tight, just kind of try to wiggle it up and down. And if you've got wiggle, probably the cause is your wheel bearing. If you have wiggle side to side, it's probably a tie rod, could be, other things like your A-arms loose, stuff like that. But basically, wiggle it up and down. And if you get any kind of movement, hardly any whatsoever, then either more than likely your wheel bearing's going bad or it is bad. So today I'm kind of going to go over how to change it. Super simple, or not change your wheel bearing, but how to grease it and maintain it. I would recommend, we only have 2 rides on this machine, and I would recommend doing it once a year, if not more. They're simple, it's not hard. Now you can take, the new wheel bearing greasers have holes in the middle so you don't have to take your axles out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, all you got to do is take your tire off, your brake caliper, and your axle nut, and your hub will come right off. That's all you have to take off. First thing you're going to do is to remove your cotter pin. That's what actually kind of keeps, it's like a safety pin for your axle nut, your castle nut there. So you just bend it straight and then push it through. That comes out. And then you're going to take I believe it's a 30 millimeter is the size of the nut that you're going to break loose. This thing you're going to probably have to have someone to hold the brakes until you break it. So the rear, if it's in gear, you don't have to worry about it, it'll break. But somebody's going to have to hold the brakes while you loosen this nut, and they're really going to have to stand it. All right, we got the castle nut off. Now to take your caliper off, you'll just need a 15 millimeter wrench or socket. You can actually probably get in the socket with this. The back you can't. To begin with, they're pretty tight, so you'll need maybe a cheater or something like that. So that wouldn't look too bad. Got that off. Just leave it right there very easily. It's got a bracket right there. Just make sure you don't pinch your brake out. Now these are going to have to kind of wiggle to get that. You have to take a little pry bar just to. There's your hub, comes right off. Now you've got your wheel bearing exposed with your axle shaft sticking through. So what you do, this is a wheel bearing greaser. I ordered this from Adrenaline Cycles, and I'll put a link at the bottom. What you do is, several companies make it, just put a little bit of grease on this outside of this thing, just so it slides in there good. I've got some grease on it because I actually already did the back ones. This one is extremely tight. Some of the ones you get may not be as tight. It's supposed to be really tight, so it fits in there snug. And then there's a groove that your grease, when you hit your grease gun, it goes in there. There's a groove inside the race of the wheel bearing, and it pushes grease inside the wheel bearing. A lot of people say you can actually, it's a sealed unit, and you'll push dirt and contaminants and stuff like that, which makes sense, but I think the benefit over having the wheel bearing full of grease versus half enough grease far outweighs getting a little bit of dirt in it. But it's sealed, so I don't think it will. You know, personally, I don't think so. It's possible, but anyway, you just kind of get that, lift the axle up in there and get that started. This one is extremely tight. I've had a wheel bearing greaser. I've been greasing our old machine and our four-wheelers. It's got the rubber O-ring. They went right in pretty easily, but you get some of the ones you'll get grease that can get out of the outside. This is, I've already done the rear. It's super tight, so you actually got to tap it in there. Just make sure you get it straight, and no grease can get out. This is a really good one, I think, from Adrenaline Cycles. I'll put the link, like I said. So what we'll do is once we get that in, push it. Make sure you get it all the way up against the wheel bearing, and then you take your grease gun. Also, I have a lock and lube in the grease fitting on the end of this. Highly recommend lock and lube. I also put a link to lock and lube. This is 100 times better than a regular grease end. I got tired of fighting, trying to get them off and loosening it and grease leaking out. This thing is awesome. You just squeeze it, hook it right over the end of your grease fitting. It can't come off. It's locked on there. You don't have to worry about not being sure, sure you're getting it in there and grease going all over the outside. The back ones, once I started, I got about 16 pumps of grease in there before I even, still didn't see anything really coming out, but I started to hear it. So that tells you put a lot of grease in these wheel bearings that they come from the factory, not greased much. So I'll start greasing it, just, grease it slow. All right, that's 15 pumps there. So let it sit there for a second. Still, I haven't heard anything, haven't seen anything. Usually grease, you'll start seeing just a hair on the, not on the actual wheel bearing coming out, but the inside around that, or you'll hear it. Okay, I just heard just a little bit of kind of a tick. So that lets me know that the wheel bearing's full, and it's starting to kind of ease out around it. So I'll just look, and taking this thing off, you push that, it comes right off. The lock and lube's amazing. Once you get that, so that held like 17, it's almost as much as that. That lets me know that this wheel bearing is half full. I also used green grease. When you do wheel bearings, you're going to use a grease that's high temperature. A general purpose grease I don't think is adequate. A lot of people use it, but I'd use something that gets upward of like 500 degrees, just because it's kind of a silicone-based grease. But anyway, this thing's hard to get back out. Pretty difficult, so you can just take you a pair of channel locks or something and just kind of wiggle it. Once you get it out just a little bit, be very careful, just take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of pop it like that on each side, and it'll start to pop out. Maybe. Just be sure not to push in like that when you hit the wheel bearing. So you're on the outside of this hub, just give it a little like that. All right, came right out. This one is tight, like I said. You really got to just be gentle and kind of get it all the way out, and then it'll pop right out. As you can see, there's like no grease on the inside, so all that grease I just pumped actually went inside the wheel bearing, which is good. So after you do that, basically you just do the stuff in reverse. You put your hub back on. Put your hub back on. Go ahead and put your castle nut on there. And that'll pull it back up nice and snug. So what I do is I just tighten it by hand until it turns like that. And then put your brake rotor back on your caliper, put the 2 bolts back in it, and then I'll have Lindsay hold the brake, and we'll really tighten this down till it gets good and tight, and we find one of the holes and put our cotter pin back in it. Put your tire back on it, and you're good to go. Again, guys, subscribe to our channel if you haven't. This is a easy necessity, I think. Grease your wheel bearings, you're going to get a lot more life out of it. I've changed a lot of wheel bearings in our old machines, so wheel bearings are a pain in the butt to change. If you have a press, it's not too bad with the right thing. So you got to take it out of your ball joint, your tie rod ends off. You got to take it off of your upper and lower arms. You got to take the whole hub off of it, and then you got to put it in a press. Press the wheel bearing out and put the new wheel bearing in. This is going to extend the life of your wheel bearings, in my opinion. Again, super easy. Get you a wheel bearing greaser, a good high temperature grease, specifically for wheel bearings or things like that. I like to use the tacky green grease. It's good for that. You can also use it for your suspension components, but don't use a general purpose. It mixes well up with the stuff that should be in there. The tacky green grease does. Anyway, subscribe to our channel for more to come.